my view is that watching a project unfold over time, and of course, it's the filmmaker themselves that it's unfolding within. And so, whatever he originally, intrigued him as a young man about this that related to him, he kept working with it and kept working with it and kept working with it throughout the years. And, that's always going to be part of it, of course. So it's interesting to see the seed of that and then kind of look at all of the other interpretations that people
Yeah.
bring to it themselves.
Which is also similar to, I was even surprised that, a lot of times people said that it was going to be a comedy, then it was a thriller, and then it was interesting to hear Ryan O'Neal saying that on Barry Lyndon, he introduced it as a horror film. And so I think he was playing around with it. And I think we tried to do that in the documentary too, about the whole process of what he was trying to accomplish. And but yeah, a lot of stories are out there, especially about Kubrick, of course. They circulate, and sometimes they are either they're true or half true, or like partially true. For years, we also thought that yes, when he met Schnitzler's grandson on Spartacus, that Kirk Douglas was the one that actually introduced him to Trump novel, and that wasn't true at all. He wanted something, as Peter Schnitzler said in the documentary in SK13. He was interested in Schnitzler in general, but he wasn't sure what. Yeah, and then later on, of course, years passed, and he realized, oh, it's going to be Trump novel. So it wasn't even Kirk Douglas that introduced him to the project, because I was pretty surprised when I heard that from Peter. And I thought it was interesting that actually Fellini wanted to grab it also, and but Stanley beat him to it. So it was really interesting to hear. Yeah.
Well, I have a little anecdote to lead off, which is I watched the film for the third time last night with my dad. Now, my dad, he doesn't like nudity, violence. So most Kubrick films are off limits to him. He also can't hear very well. There's no subtitles. This is a very challenging documentary because the information flow is so high. I didn't think he was going to like it. Like, I didn't think he would last through the whole movie. So I get to the end. He's quiet the whole time. Get to the end. I actually emotionally engaged with the documentary a lot last night. I had tears rolling down my eyes just from, the things you were putting across in the movie.
Yeah.
And I turned to Dad, and he's clapping, and he says, "I loved it. Now I want to watch Eyes Wide Shut."
Yeah.
Wow.
So you have a whole new market.
Yeah, that's really moving because, again, initially from the beginning, from day one, to hear that this really what I consider one of the greatest cinematic geniuses in cinema, say that this was his favorite film, or that he felt like he actually did something new with this, and for people to limit, to just put it in this little tiny box about like whatever is just marriage or something, or mock him for it, especially in the industry. It's a good feeling now. It's been 25 years, and it's really been the goal to just put an end to that, because it's totally bullshit. When you have Stanley Kubrick saying, I'm doing something different with this, and to just kind of diminish it into this little bit of, 2-3 nights with a guy wandering around because he wants to get laid, that's just not Kubrick, Maybe another director, okay, I get it, but not with Stanley Kubrick. And that was the whole aim of the documentary, is to just kind of explore all those areas and to really show what he went through. He really went through hell with this film. And I don't mean even just the decades, but towards the end of his life, in his 70s, that's, as you said, with the tears, that's how I feel. It's like, you're Stanley Kubrick. You've given all those people their break. and you're surrounded by people on your set who are doubting you, and no one gets why you're making this movie, and no one is, I heard this a lot, like, we were surprised there were no 2001 shots. There were, but what is a 2001 shot? It's like, it's still Kubrick. He's doing something amazing, just, you know, and I keep repeating this. When I went to see Eyes Wide Shut the first day it came out, you know, I went in not going in to judge, is this going to be a good movie? I knew Kubrick was way ahead of me, was way ahead of all of us. And it was a matter of figuring out what the hell is he doing here. And I wanted the documentary just kind of open the box and present to all those possibilities from, and we fact checked everything, even newspaper. I mean, I can't tell you how many newspaper, I think it was like thousands, right, Stephen? Thousands of articles and interviews jump in. I mean, I don't hear Stephen.
It was certainly getting up to thousands. It felt like thousands. It's probably certainly 500 for sure, without being in danger of exaggerating. I mean, and there was a lot that were unused, of course. There was a lot. There was a lot of research done that didn't make the cut because it was a 2-hour film and not a 5-hour film. So there was a heck of a lot of research done and not needed in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of stuff comes in, if you notice, because you've seen it now 3 times. There's so much information in there that is just like bits, because again, you need to have as much information in there and go into Schnitzler's world and also what Stanley was dealing with, just making the movie itself or in post-production, and how exhausting it was for him towards the end to do that sound mix at his house that Leon talks about, and just guiding that whole thing. I think his body just at the end, it was too much, but he was sharp all the way to the end. And I think Leon said that a zillion times. So,
And that's right. I loved when in there you talked about going through all of the materials, the production materials. And I remember going to the archives and looking through everything and just going, wow, this is so Kubrickian, because everything was just amazing and detailed. You wouldn't have seen, you going through that and just looking at it from a film perspective, from a post-production perspective, you would be so impressed. Everybody would be so impressed with those production materials. And that really says a lot as to where his mind was at, what level he was still working at.
And that is explicitly said by Tony in the film, but
Yes.
Liz, until you said it right now, it didn't click with me.
Ah,
So it does take me a few viewings to get all of it. But yes, absolutely.
I mean, look, it's like, James is here. It's like the guy is crazy. Just people watch the movie and they don't even see the bits of like all the background. Since 1999, this guy was like recording everything. And sometimes even he was recording stuff that I'm like, where did you get that from? And so it was to combine all that, and then Stephen's thousands of articles and research and all the interviews. It's pretty massive, but that's just how Kubrick worked. That's the only way you could do it justice, is that you have to dive in and and I'm sure James has something to say. How did you record all this?
Oh, I had two VCRs. I actually started doing this a few years before, several years before, with my favorite baseball team, the Mets. They were finally a good team. This is in the 80s. And I said, I gotta record this stuff because like it was only a few years after the VCR was new. And I didn't know that things like YouTube was coming down, and
Sure.
all the ways in the future you'd be able to re-see these things. I thought like it's gonna be gone. I gotta record this. So what I would do is I would have a master tape and I would just have it recording all the time. And then I would have a second VCR hooked up And if
Wow.
I happen to get something, I would pop out the master tape and copy that onto my, my Mets tape.
And
And
most of the stuff is not even available anymore. Like
yeah,
when you go to the source, it doesn't exist.
so I did that. I had t dozens and dozens of hours of my favorite baseball team, and I did it with a couple other things. And then when, I was starting to do it with Kubrick, but there was not much going on after Full Metal Jacket. I got a couple of spotty things here and there, but then they started rumors he's making a new film, and I started. So everything I had is a second generation because I would tape it on the master and then copy it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I would just have a room full of tapes, So I had to copy the bits that I was able to grab. So, the three steps, the first recording, the dubbing over, and then the digitizing everything. It lost every step it loses a little bit of quality, but better what you got than it being lost.
Yeah, but it's very special because it's rare. You can't find the stuff out there. And then we had to actually now go in, clean it up, log everything on top of the logs that he did, and then sift through it, create 10 different timelines of all the in chronological order. Then I would scan it, pull stuff out of it, and then Stephen had have to go through it again. Did we miss anything? And it was like and this is just the videos, huh?
Yeah, I have a large collection of magazines. We went through the magazines
Yeah,
as
we
well.
went
I
to
have a
magazines,
crate full of
newspaper.
magazines and newspapers,
Yeah,
and we
Yes.
had like
yeah,
one about premieres, and then we had a video about the rumors, and a video with interviews with Tom and Nicole, and that's eventually what you saw, Tony.
yeah.
You came to me one day and you said,
Send them over. Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I I had somebody transcribe each
yeah,
one. I went, what?
yeah,
Why?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
In fact,
It's
James sent us the actual digital files so that we didn't take, because if we'd have taken them off YouTube, there'd have even been another
Right,
level of
yeah.
degradation. So we
right.
managed to, James kindly sent us the original digitizations of those VHS tapes.
Yeah, and it's amazing because even when you think about the the focus puller reflection, we
Right.
were looking for it everywhere, but James had all of them because ironically those were the only clips pretty much used to promote the movie. The
On
focus
TV.
puller was in that.
Yeah, on the TV stuff,
So
yeah.
so
Right.
anytime you saw Sidney Poitier, so I was like, okay, so Stanley had all these clips out there.
I didn't get there was an error in the original theatrical showing when Cruz is coming to the doctor's office the first time. He gets up the elevator,
Elevator.
elevator door opens. The music doesn't fade out. It ended really abruptly. It
Mm.
just like cut in the middle of the
Then
music.
they
And
smoothed
I
it out.
remember in the theater, oh, that was weird. And then they fixed it up pretty. I
Mm.
think by the second time I saw it,
I mean, that cut comes just after Tom and Nicole were at the mirror
Yeah.
getting
yeah.
hot. So, I mean, I extrapolate from that it went a bit further, did that scene?
Well,
Some
in the trailer, it's longer. If you watch the Show West clips that they showed, the making out in the mirror is a lot longer
Yeah, it's about a minute.
than in the film.
Yeah, but I think there was probably a sex scene because in the script there's a sex scene
Yeah,
just
but
before they go to the office. So it's kind of a scene in bed
yeah,
talking about
yeah.
blowjob.
Actually, actually, here's a little again from staring at this thing for so many years. If you really look in the frame of the mirror,
Mm.
you see Tom is wearing almost like an undie, and he's not naked actually. He's wearing a cup.
I remember when you found that, Tony, you were so excited to see
Yeah,
Tom.
yeah. So you see a little bit of the pubic hair, but then if you look in the frame, he's wearing looks like sorry, Tom, like a diaper, but yeah, that like like something to conceal, But
Yeah.
of course, she was naked, and
Of course.
yeah. So I think yeah,
But I
but
wanted to
yeah,
say something about that, just listening to this conversation. It's so beautiful because this is what makes the world of Kubrick just thrive and be so deep. All the people who are fascinated by everything that has to do with his work and in different places or thinking different things about him or recording things or watching movies over and over again and bringing their own views to it. I mean, that's an unusual group of people who have like minds, even if they have a very different sensibilities, that connection through this great artist's work. I just find it very moving.
And 25 years later.
And 25 years.
But again, that's his genius. It's, and it's still, there's a lot more to discover in that movie.
Yes.
Because of just the level of research. And that's what really bugged me the most, was like, it was just really dismissed. And, I'm hoping with the movie now that that's starting to open up and people look at it. But again, there are also, it's not just even the cuts in the movie or what he left in there, because again, these are the little Kubrick little hidden things that he adds here and there. But, it was nice to like get his notebook. There's a lot of stuff in that notebook that eventually I would like to show, that really almost like a puzzle in the other pages below. But, some people also wonder, like, well, how do you know that this was his final? Because the next page, see, what he did is he cut all the pages on top. He kept just the list page on top. But if you look, you flip and you go to the next page, he wrote in there, Nigel back Tuesday, Concord. So he was writing this like literally 2 days, So he was writing what day Nigel was coming back, because he died 4 days later. And he wrote a lot of stuff about channels, which I still do, eventually we should put those pages out for people maybe to break the code. But he wrote something about Tom and the channels, channel 1, channel 2, and they're not audio channels. There's a lot of mysterious stuff in there. And he talks about in there also about Tom watching the movie, what night Tom is going to watch it, when Nigel is coming back, the Concorde, and of course the list. And then he scribbles a few things, and that was the end. And yeah, that was very
you can imagine
moving.
What it was like to find that notebook. I mean, it really is, it's like an iconic totemic item, for people who are in that Kubrick world.
Because he's thinking on paper. He's really like thinking, like he's writing down, it's like, block this, or I gotta fix that. And it's just like, it's beautiful to see that to see Stanley Kubrick scribbling and thinking of what to do, But
I think he once said, if I give someone some instructions and they don't write it down in a notebook, I don't trust them.
Leon, yeah.
Yeah.
He drove Leon crazy.
Yeah.
He drove Leon nuts with, like, write it down.
Write it down. Make sure you don't forget to look at what you've written down.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah.
Did you find the notebook in the archives?
No comment.
Okay.
But again, you can't just go to the archives and just say, I know. You have to talk to people. So the archives gave us one layer. Then when we talk to people, they give us another layer. And then talk to people again and again and again. As I mentioned, like with Julian, I went to England 4 times to talk to Julian. It was always, every time he would just tell me mind-blowing stories, but he still wouldn't tell me what I wanted to hear. I wanted to know what happened. And so a lot of people were, and not just Julian, everybody was guarded. Everybody was just repeating exactly what was in the newspapers. They saw it, they loved it. 4 days, he died happy. Okay, but what else is missing? What else is missing? And it was only at one of the interviews with one of the heads at Warner, he said something about, like, do you think if the head of Warner Brothers didn't like something that Kubrick did, would he tell him? And I'm like, why are you saying that? I thought it was a strange thing to say before, we started filming. And that got me on chasing that thought. And then I did have that conversation with Leon before he passed. And we actually had a big blowout over it because he felt that I was trying to say that he was lying to me. And he says, if that happened, it's news to me. Then nobody fucking told me what was going on. I mean, because again, don't forget, he was Kubrick's representative. I don't think anybody would go tell Leon something like that what they think of the movie, let's say, right? But you see in Film Worker, they actually literally moved his office from an office and put him in the hallway. He was working in the hallway. So there's, it's the film business, And I think that's why also like some of the festivals in the beginning or production companies, they just, made them a bit worry or not, because it's the
I
industry.
mean, SK, this film, yes.
Yeah.
I want Stanley to ask his question, and then I'd like to hear from two people who weren't here last week, Scott and James Sherman. So Stanley first.
Comment or two, and then a question or two. First, much respect and many kudos to everybody who was involved with the film. I'm just a piker. I've only seen it twice so far, so I'm 1/3 of the way behind Mark Lentz, but I'll catch up sooner than later. Earlier, Liz made comment about Stanley's working on this for 30 some years, since the days of Greenwich Village. And I wonder if we flip that and say he kept pushing it down inside of him for 30 plus years until eventually circumstances brought him to the point where he was really able to work on it for just a short time, a couple of years, you know what I mean? A question or two. Number one, where can I find the panties board right now?
The panties board. That was interesting. I remember working on that. That was quite an enjoyable bit.
And another question, a more serious question, and that is the people who are on this screen now, other than the people who worked on the production, of course, are already avid Kubrick fans. You know that. And we have a small circle of friends who are also Kubrick fans, in essence, the New York City-based SKAS group. What are your intentions now? What comes next? And how can we help you?
Do you want me to answer that?
Please.
Well, one is, I think we rushed this because of the 25th anniversary. We didn't want the year to end without this film being out. The main objective right now is, hopefully, is the last card in the movie. And I'm still going to continue to push for that. They have to release Stanley's cut. The way he cut it, the way he left it. Even if they think that the changes are not that great, music is, every shot, every movement, a Kubrick way, shifts everything. And I think that needs to be done. I also think that the aspect ratio of the film is completely in, whether it's DVD or whether it's the 35mm scan that is Steven sent me a copy of in Italy, they're all off. There's a lot of information missing. I think that the one copy that shows you pretty much most of the information is the 4x3, sadly. That crappy DVD that they released in the beginning.
Yeah, the first release DVD.
The first release. That's what shows you. Like if you look at the last shot when they're at the toy store and we have the 2 stars on the ground and Stanley has them walk and they stop and each has a star on each side. and we do the slide shaft that delivery. We could only get that on the 4x3. So there's a lot of information on top, bottom, in the DVD that's missing. So the transfer is just all over the place, but also like we want to see Stanley's cut. And
What's in it for Warner Brothers to release Stanley's cut?
money.
Okay,
Money.
so
They'll make a
what's it
lot of
gonna-
money.
Well, how do you and we help to convince them of that? What has to happen?
I think the more people are talking about it, the more because I think Warner and the estate owe it to the audience that I think every single one of us and every single Kubrick fan bought every version of Eyes Wide Shut out there. I think Steven has about, I don't know, how many do you have, Steven? Let's say.
15.
Thank you.
Are we getting
We grab every copy out there, whether it's a British release, Italian release, DVD, 4x3. And it's like, we've all put in a lot of money in this. Right? So we're entitled to that, because without the audience, there is no Stanley Kubrick, right? We're the audience.
That's what I would say in a direct way towards Warner when you ask that. Warner is, as all of the studios are, it is about the money. They wouldn't say anything otherwise. And in this case, our documentary presents Eyes Wide Shut, as we say, in a whole new way to approach this film, as though you're seeing a Stanley Kubrick movie with different eyes. And so to use this in intrigue and excitement and the depth of the scholarship and the artistry of the documentary to then promote, hey, everybody, go watch Eyes Wide Shut again. And especially we have a special release, which is you're going to see it, how Stanley left it. And we're still going to be able to show you what we did, but it's going to be more disclosive. And obviously it would fascinate people.
How about Warner Brothers promotes a double feature with an intermission?
Fantastic.
SK13, Eyes Wide Shut. Mark's father gets to see it with new eyes, and millions of people do. I'll see it again, or I'll see it for the first time, and I'll get this information that you folks put together, and I'll see the movie a little more clearly.
Yeah, I mean, for them, if it's about the money, they can make all that money all over again.
Absolutely.
But give us what Kubrick, the man that we admire and respect, show us how he left it. We just
should I write a little email to Warner Brothers, and to whom should I address it? And to whom should
We'll send you the info. We'll send you the info.
Okay, well, here you see where I'm going. It's not about
Yeah. Look, the negative is sitting on the shelf. That's what I showed at the end. That was the negative sitting there.
It's
and
not
it's like
about,
transfer it right.
it's not about the six of us, but it's how many other people can the six of us, pebble in a pond. But we have to direct people to send their letters to someone at Warner Brothers and say, we know there's more and we want to see it, and you'll make money from it. But a lot of people would need guidance on exactly what to write and to whom, because WIFM, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for Warner Brothers? What's in it for me is not important. What's in it for Warner Brothers is what's important ultimately.
Yeah, and that would be like a new release of a Kubrick movie. There are no more Kubrick movies. It's like, what do you
Rediscover the master.
Start all over again. It's all
Right.
over again. Because again, 13 movies. How many times we're going to show The Shining or Full Metal Jacket, etc. This is like with fresh eyes. This would be very, and it's the respect for the artist.
And even the controversy, I mean, there's nothing to stop it, because the controversy about what was done afterwards, that everybody says, was it done? And then in the movie, of course, we show a lot of the things that were done and other things that we have done the research on. and have it all backed up. Okay, 25 years has passed. It's not about pointing fingers and blaming people. It's about understanding how an industry works. When a great artist who controlled everything passes, and what do? Those people whose minds don't work that way do to jump in to rescue their investment. And that's just the way it is. So, we're not coming out punching. We're just saying, look, we're presenting this to all of you as what happened and why it happened. And that's just the nature of the business. But of course, Stanley was always caught between those two things, being the artist first.
The multitudes don't know anything about this. All they know is they don't know it.
So that's the fun, that's the intrigue, that's the taking what SK13 does, and then I would say raising the profile of the film, of the documentary itself, and then using that to, go forward into, and now that you're bringing this up, I mean, this is something we will continue to drill down on and come up with a strategy for people who are interested in.
Double feature, free popcorn.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's a lot of things that were wrong that happened on that movie. And my aim from the beginning, especially with Leon, Nigel, just anybody that was, I know a lot of people were involved in the doc that just wanted to remain anonymous. They didn't want to be out there, and I respect that. I won't, but most people insisted and proved that a lot of changes happened to the movie, and they're just not right. It's that simple. It undermines one of cinema's greatest artists. And look, if the movie came out and it was a big hit and it was a 2001 Space Odyssey, I would literally shut up. But to actually do all that and then start to say that he lost it, he was too old, or it's a movie about marriage. It's like, come on. It's the big picture.
Yeah, I know last time we were together, I referenced, I don't know, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Another thought just popped into my head. Leonardo da Vinci left a lot of work unfinished. Now, nobody went back and fixed it up by adding plastic to it and say, here's what it would have looked like had Leonardo had the opportunity to finish it. So we want to see what the master left.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want
even if the narration is missing, but watching it and knowing that okay, this is how he left it, but we can imagine the narration. That's fine, But the whole idea was from the beginning is to catalog everything that he was planning and asking questions. And was he planning to do this here? What about the sound mix? What about the music? What about the cuts? What about the voice? What about the recorded? He never met Kate Blanchett. You know what I mean? All those little things in there they could make or break a movie. They shift the way a movie plays. And it's a fascinating thing to see Kubrick's, the way he just left it. Just the way he left it. It's that simple. Right? I mean,
because everything was shot. Everything that he wanted to shoot, he shot. Apart from maybe some of the second unit establishment, the way it is. So though there were scenes missing that they had to really cobble together the narrative, it was done, wasn't it? All that.
Yeah. And we do show also that he was playing that thing. I mean, people got stuck, or not everybody. A few people I talked to got stuck on the fact that the mistakes. I'm in the doc. Those are not mistakes. I introduced them as the devil's advocate in the beginning as what everybody thinks those are mistakes. I've gone, all right, let's look at the mistakes, and we open it up, and you start to see there's a lot of stuff that makes no sense. But then you realize at the end, but he didn't care. That was part of his approach. He was playing. He was having fun. It's eyes wide shut. And I love what some of the people, the messages I'm getting now about people are saying that eyes wide shut to them now means it's the things that we choose not to see in society, in culture, or corruption, etc. It so the doc is starting to do what we all here wanted to do, but now you just have to release it, release eyes wide shut the way it is.
I think the documentary itself is quite Kubrickian, you know, just based on the fact that it's very rewatchable and you get more out of it. It's strange how that.
Dense. Yeah.
Man, Tony is very much a Kubrick type figure to work with.
Oh, that's a dig. That's a dig right there.
The
That's
best
a dig.
backhanded compliment ever. And it's true.
No, look, from the beginning it was this. Okay. With film worker, I was like, all right, film work are supposed to look and feel simple. Even I remember people when we were doing film worker, they said, no, 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 we should get like some fur coats for Leon and rings and maybe because he looks so cool. And I'm like, no, he lives in fucking LA, he's forgotten, he lives alone. It needs to be really like, even if you look at the camera shots, there's just a guy sitting with a little light above him deliberately. But with SK, it was like, all right, this is Kubrick. So we had to, yeah, there were a few people that wanted to kill me, but we pushed. We pushed. Casper was great. Steven was amazing. James was amazing. Willem. I mean, Willem also, like, he lives in the Netherlands and he would just come in. I would get him a taxi and he would come in with all his hard drives and all the things that he's been collecting and just look for anything that I could use. You know, all the Eyes Wide Shut material you see on the Steenbeck before Stanley died in the movie, that was a real Steenbeck that I found at one of the post houses, dragged it, took it to the fourth floor, carried it upstairs, got the Eyes Wide Shut reels and just keep filming. So we wanted to do everything right.
And you did.
Because it's Kubrick, because, but if you're going to sell this, you want to, it was really worth it. Now it's worth it. At one point, I really fucking hated it. I hated it, but you go, he says it in the movie. Stanley says it in the movie, when it works, there's no greater joy.
It's hard.
Well, especially when no one wants to talk to you. Yeah, I mean.
Is it like trying to write War and Peace on a bumper car?
Yeah. Yeah, except in our case, it was like there was no car. There was no car, And I remember pushing my bike with the two monitors in the back of my bicycle and a hard drive because I couldn't leave it at the office that I was sharing with somebody because they could steal the hard drives. So every day in the rain, take the bike, come back, And a lot of times even James was there, when we just like lost everything dropped, and then he says, "Hey, talk to Steven." And then Steven came to the rescue, and then Liz came to the rescue, and then so it was like a pain in the ass to get this thing done. And then you would go film with people, and then you get there and they go, "I don't want to talk." Sometimes I filmed with people, they won't talk to me after I filmed with them. They just freak out.
Yeah, the last few months, people online were like, is this thing ever going to come out?
Right.
People
I didn't think it was going to come out.
You were paying attention to that. I mean, of course you follow what's being said and you just sit there back there and you think, boy, people have no idea what's going on or what's creating a problem or stopping or starting with a project like this. Although I think we're going to be coming up with a way for people to get a better idea of that along with footage and stuff, but it's a process in itself. You have to stay committed in a way that is almost unimaginable. I mean, that's the core of Tony. It's just gonna sit there and do it until he can't stand looking at it anymore and then make the breakthrough until it's exactly what it needs to be.
Well, I think this whole thing has been driven by, I mean, I don't want to sound crazy, but it's, you feel Kubrick's spirit is restless, I would. I would
I
honk.
know who
I
you
would honk to everyone until
You still do.
no. I think Stanley. You know what I mean? It's like there's no way he would rest. No way. I mean, Leon said it to me towards the end. He said he's so glad he wasn't alive to see what happened
Mhm.
and what the critics were saying. And there are a couple of key lines in the movie that I think that are like really beautiful. One is when he says he didn't care if they like it, but do they get it?
I hated all the people saying it wasn't sexy. Did you really want it to be? Is that
Yeah.
what you were waiting
Yeah.
for? I mean,
Yeah.
it's to me, it's intentionally not sexy. The story is that Cruz is looking for that and he couldn't find it. And it's about fidelity. It's not supposed to, he's trying to go cheat on his wife and he failed miserably, and that's the point. It's not supposed to be sexy.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's not sexy. It's not. I thought I was going to see Tom naked. I thought we were going to see.
Yeah, that was the hype too.
But also, don't forget, Stanley also played on that hype. Remember,
He did.
Kubrick is not left or right, huh? He could go because he pushed it to also as a sexy movie, but with it deeper. You know what I mean?
In a
I
specific.
don't know if he was aware of how much scuttlebutt there was going on. Because wasn't he just like in his own world making the movie and all, all the stuff going on the internet and basic cable was kind of new. And I don't know if he was really aware
But he picked
extent of
people.
it.
He picked a couple that brought that with him.
Yeah, that's
He's
true.
not stupid. He was
Yeah.
like, he started the whole thing. Again, like I said, he always had a plan, and that was a big deal for us too. We spent a lot of time um, conveying how devastated he was about the Holocaust film, about Aryan Papers. That really almost killed him.
Losing it.
I like the
Losing.
little montage at one point in SK13 showing the various films that came out. Like you showed the Rod Steiger film.
Yeah, because everybody was always copying him, and yeah,
And all the Vietnam films. Yeah,
yeah,
he didn't have lucky timing.
no.
Or sometimes, something came out before, like in the case of Aryan Papers, before he can even get it out. And
But
some of the complaints of Full Metal Jacket was like, okay, we've seen enough Vietnam movies at this point. Do we need another? That was some of the criticism at the time of Full Metal Jacket.
yeah, and then people would go into production, post-production, they're done, and he's still in pre-production. And
Right. Oh, Platoon won Best Picture while he was making
yeah.
Metal Jacket.
Well, I want to get Scott's voice in and James Robert Sherman, Scott.
One of the most striking aspects of your documentary is the synchronization of clips. And one is clips with Eyes Wide Shut with the earlier adaptation. Second category is clips from Eyes Wide Shut with other Kubrick films and how they aligned. And the third is Eyes Wide Shut with other people's productions. The question I have is, why do you think he did these? Are these tributes? Are these things where he's trying to put in clues or something else, a combination?
Well, again, we go back to the title. It's like you've seen it before. It looks familiar. Why does it look familiar? It's the doubling. It's, and we go into like, again, the uncanny and just something that kind of makes you feel like I've seen. It's almost like dreams too, right? You feel like you've been there or a deja vu, etc. As far as the Trump Novel, the other productions, there was like about 3. And yeah, I was pretty surprised that the blocking and the shots were exact. And so, of course, if you're not a Kubrick fan, you go, oh, he was copying someone else. But I just don't think that way. He doesn't work that way. He's I don't know if you agree or not, but that's just what he was going for. he's going, no, it already exists. I'm not really interested in that. I'm doing this. And again, that's Kubrick's mind is it's like what Terry Gilliam in that famous clip that is all over the internet. It's like he says he even today doesn't even know what the ending of 2001 means, and that's what makes Kubrick great. So Kubrick always had a lot of reasons, he's a lot of research, and
But
it's
the films were it's the same source material, so of course it's
but we're talking about the look, like you saw even the bed
Yeah.
behind the guy. Sometimes
oh,
it's the flowers on the bed, or the way they hit him on the side of the street and knock him down, or the newspaper, the timing,
okay.
looking at the dead woman. So you go, oh, is it the note? It's word for word almost, and yes, it's from the book, but delivering it through a metal gate. I mean, come on, it's
I think it's also the homage from one creative, one filmmaker to others. In a way, it's saying this is, well, that's the whole.
yeah. But the thing is, those productions, they were shitty productions.
They were, and they were
I mean, to be honest, they were television pieces.
right. They were
Well,
the
right.
first one was a German or Austrian
Yeah,
television
yeah,
film.
yeah. A
And
couple of
and
them
the-
were really good, but the other ones were almost like a little bit. I think Stephen Wright. It was one of us a little bit on a horror kind of,
Yeah.
the
somebody's being.
Italian one, softcore
Yeah, exactly.
party movie.
Yeah. So he's saying basically, no, it's not really about the material or about this. They look alike. I'm going for something completely different.
Mhm. Also, since you brought up the list that had the voiceover narration mentioned,
Here it is. Yeah.
we did a group read of the script before shooting began that had this sort of narration in it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm glad it's not there. It seems much more pedestrian than it is without it, where you're thinking more than having somebody fill in to something that's obvious. How do you feel about that?
Again, if you read, well, I have the pink pages, which were the final ones because he was changing dialogue all the time.
You're honoring Jimmy.
So, so I have a copy of that, and he did rewrite the lines a lot. He shifted them a lot. As a matter of fact, if you watch in the doc when Leon was talking, and there's one of the dailies, the dialogue in that daily at the orgy is a little bit different because at one point Stanley had him go, "We know who you are, doctor." And then Stanley decided, no, don't say doctor, because the whole thing was supposed to be that we know who you are. But then they had to take the doctor word out. And so he was rewriting constantly, obviously, right? So the narration was being rewritten all the way to the end. But if you read, let's say you and I read 2001 and we haven't seen it, and we read the narration of Hal, or Barry Lyndon, let's say, would be like, okay, it's like it's on the nose, so he walked, he went here. But Kubrick uses things in the artistry of it. He has a way of doing narration. He has a way of the tone. I think would have been incredible, the Kubrick way. It wouldn't have been like how you read it on paper. It would have been really different. But it's also had a lot of the darker side of it, the interior monologue, which is Tom would do one thing, but he was thinking something else. So I love the Marion scene when she's crying and she's going, "I love you, I love you, I love you," and there was a voiceover that he's kind of going, "Hey, I wouldn't mind screwing her," but then once she starts to cry, that gives you a hint about his character, the darkness in his character. He was turned off by her tears. He didn't think she was sexy anymore. So, it's Kubrick, huh?
And the scene at the morgue, it's kind of shot in a way that it kind of needs. You can imagine the voiceover or his inner thoughts being right across that sequence because it's kind of long and strange. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen it with narration.
And that's the whole Fridolin thing from Trom Novelle. I mean, if you read that source material, it's stunning. the interior monologue, the split totally in that world of the duality. I'm a doctor, I'm going to help you, but now I'm also kind of cruising around looking for people who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
And scene where in the bedroom where Nicole comes out and she's framed with her see-through little teddy and they're having the fight before the If You Men Only Knew. And when she says that to him, to Tom, oh, so you're saying that the only reason that a man would want to talk with me, speak with me, is because he wants to fuck me? And the way she says it, and he's just silent because he knows. And she knows the truth in those terms, and she uses it herself. But just when I was thinking about that scene again recently, he's just looking at her like, don't make me say that's true, but it is. It has that feel to it.
And it's interesting about Cary Warren too, which we interview in the film, when he says that Kubrick wanted a wig for
Yeah.
Lily's double. So obviously he was planning explicit scenes with the young girl and he wanted a double for her. So I think that was also going to go further. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're also seeing that he's witnessed the outcome of this illegal act and he leaves and does nothing about it. So even if he's not involved personally, he's basically saying, well, that's the way it is.
Yeah. He just wants to look good always. He wants to save the day and he's all about morals. And I think that is one of the greatest shots, that split second when Ziegler puts his hands on his shoulders. He goes, but you know that, don't you? And then you get that little smile of Tom, the character.
Yeah.
He has that little smile. Is like, yeah, you're right. It's
and
like,
at that moment, Ziegler looks like he's the devil.
Yeah.
He's the personification of evil.
Yeah. And he knows what Tom is thinking. Like he knows he also has that desire in him. And so again, that's Kubrick's the layering.
All the best people.
All the best people.
Yeah. And that was actually the original the script which he didn't shoot originally also earlier on was very political. So Ziegler was actually, his office overlooked, and it was overlooking the from the window he would look at the Statue of Liberty. And then there was this whole thing. And then I think he just kind of pulled back, and he, as of like, this guy is like also more of a power player in politics and in money and mafia, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot in the movie. Yeah, there's so much in there.
The movie is contemporary, but the story is eternal.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful way to say it. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, and Kubrick always knew that was. You just said something that really like says it all, which is it's never about. He's not going to make a movie about marriage. He's interested in behavior, man, how destructive man can be, the violence, the power, the greed.
It's as relevant in 2025 as it was in 1968, as it was 2,000 years ago. Just saying.
Yeah, and that never, it just didn't add up, that people would say, and that's what drove me crazy, that like, oh no, I like it. It's okay, it makes me think about my wife or jealousy and marriage and having children now, but it's not really a good movie. No. Kubrick doesn't make movies about that. It just, because he's too, he was crazy. I mean, it's like 20 years, 10 years thinking about a story. If he wanted to make a movie, like, he would just been making movies every 3 years, not every 10 or 15.
Yep.
that's undermining an artist like that. He's proved it over and over and over. And I still love Warren Lieberfarm, that he was the head of the Warner Home Video. He said that every time Kubrick would say, I'm going to make a movie, the studio would go, why the hell do we need to make that movie? And then 10, 20 years later, they go, oh, because he said he always knew what's going to happen in the future, and he would nail it.
And the same thing will happen with the re-release of Stanley's cut. Same.
Yes. Yeah, it's always in the news now, huh? It's like every time there's a sex scandal, his eyes wide shut. Every time there's corruption, eyes wide shut. Trafficking. I mean, yeah.
It's so unfortunate and even sad. You had that sequence at the beginning of the documentary that showed how dismissive critics and everybody else was. And they just looked at it. I don't know what they were looking for, but they weren't looking very deeply, certainly. And they said, well, this is a miss on the part of Kubrick. And what were they looking for? What were they anticipating? What did they want? What did they expect? It had nothing to do with, the thing is, they were so out of it. It's really shocking to see.
Well, they didn't take their time. I think and I think we do cover that in the doc. It was like events that just carried on. I think one of them was Raphael's book, which is even Lee Siegel actually like really nailed it. Is that book, like all the reviewers just kind of went and bought the book, read it, and then they didn't know much about the story. And they just went along with the fact that Stanley lost it. He was just a control freak. He was, and I think from there it's just, and then the resignation and the executives and Stanley not being around, all that stuff like really played a huge role against the film. And, and when you have something that complex and a filmmaker like Kubrick, of course it's going to go like that because it's impossible. I mean, you don't have filmmakers like that. How are you going to even have critics like that would get what that man was doing? His stuff needs time, always. There's no way anybody could crack it open right away.
To that point, there's also a story about Thomas Edison, who went through a whole series of experiments trying to find the right filament, the right size, the right length, the right material to make what we now know as the light bulb. So when he finally did it, he came out for the press conference, and a lot of the reporters said to him, Mr. Edison, how does it feel to have failed 999 times? And his response was, I don't feel like I failed at all. I just kept working until it was right. So how could, I'm just echoing what you just said a minute ago, Tony, and that is, how could somebody with purportedly a 200 IQ, and even if that's not true, we get the point. How can other people who are not that intelligent possibly fathom what this guy had between his ears? Can't be done.
With time, yeah. You need time. You need time, and you need guidance.
Yeah.
And he wasn't around to guide it.
Janet Maslin was reviewing. It was a good. She was really championing.
Yeah, but supposedly she left Time because of it.
Really?
Yeah, she resigned because or fired or resigned, and that's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. This movie was just like, I mean, you see how also Charlie Rose was so obsessed with like trying to prove that this is a bad. It's a bad. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, and then he gets busted for sex scandals later too.
It's perfect.
Yeah, he would love to admit that.
Like, you don't know what that movie's about? Come on,
perfect.
But it's true that people seem to revel in knocking the film at the time. They actually enjoyed doing so for some reason. Maybe it's we built this guy up so much and so on. But they seemed to enjoy it and wanted to top one another and how much they could be so over
Yeah.
the top in doing
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And like audience-wise, if they complain about the movie, that's fine. But what irritated me was that people really close to him were doing it. And big people in the industry, without going to names and blah blah, it just the mocking was horrible. It was sad. I mean, one thing if it was like if it was Fear and Desire, okay. But there was more to this, So
It's like that famous Rolling Stone review of the Dylan album with I think it was Greil Marcus. It's a one-line review. What is this shit?
What album was it? I missed that, Scott. What album?
I might have been Dylan, where he does all the covers.
it's just amazing how also the messages we're getting. Some people you go, those are the people that should be reviewing movies because they say stuff that is really mind-blowing. Like even Don Daniels, who used to write for Sight and Sound, he sent he sent a long email, but the one line that really stayed with me, he said the documentary is thinking.
Oh yeah, I love.
And it's it is because we were really trying to figure out what is this man doing, and I feel we accomplished that by kind of getting people to think with us. We don't really spoon feed; we're just more showing, going back and forth, playing the devil's advocate, saying, "Okay, that doesn't add up. That doesn't add up. Oh, but let's look at it through Kubrick's eyes." And I'm proud of that.
Since you've watched the film so many times, and you see obviously how other people are analyzing the film and subtext and so on, what do you think are some of the things people are picking up on that you agree with, and what are those that you think are bull?
I still don't agree with the marriage and jealousy thing. They kept saying, but this is it's too much, has a little bit of a reminder of reality. I think people picked up on that a lot. But but people didn't, somehow blew my mind that they didn't connect the part that's what actors do. That's what happens on film sets. They looked at these things as, oh, I see that, but the movie's flawed. It's not well done. But I wish they would have just said, wait a minute, oh, this is happening, but that's what happens on film sets. Again, big blue lights. Nobody lives like that in an apartment with all these big blue lights coming in. Movie sets, you do. You don't use the same car. Movie sets, you do. Or you create this L shape of a street and you keep going in a circle around it. In a movie set, you do. For example, take a look at Tom's view behind him through his window in his office. And look at Nicole when she's changing, when she's naked in the daytime and brushing everywhere. They're the exact background with the water tank. So again, Stanley's playing with backgrounds like, are you watching? Are you looking? And those are facades. And again, we'll go back to Schnitzler's facades. It's on the surface, that's what things look like, but there's something deeper. So a lot of things people said were great, and we used some of them. And some things were like, oh, come on, Anything undermining, I think I just always dismissed. He didn't know what he was doing, or he was so scared, or no, he wasn't. And Tom was there every single day. Even Leon said that. He was dressed, ready to go. He was cooperative. As far as Arlie Ermy saying what he said, look, we didn't even ask Ermy any of that stuff. He's the one just went off because we were filming for Film Worker. He just went off on that story. And that's why you hear it a little bit, because I already turned off my camera, but then my other sound was running. No, I think it was the other way around. I turned off my big sound and my camera as not a backup for sync, That's why you hear it so crackling. He just went off on that, about how Stanley was so angry and hated the movie. Now, if you ask me, do I believe Ermy? Yes. Do I also believe the other people? Yes.
And
Because
I would say this
all
as a
filmmakers have shitty days.
right. This goes back to what Stephen was saying and what Tony's been saying. When you're in that film world, at that level, at that depth, there will be those days that you hate everything about it and everyone who comes near it. And especially, I'm going to say it, your stars, because there's so much
You
that
want to
you,
kill
as
them.
an artist,
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
do with stars of that level. So easily, I think Ermi would be the perfect person for Kubrick to go off with and just say whatever he's going to say, man to man, about all of this. But that doesn't mean that's how he felt the next day.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
or
that
2
he
days
hated his
later.
movie or he hated
Right.
them. No.
But at
Yeah.
that moment, yeah, he was frustrated, very likely.
Yeah, and some days would be like he loves Leon, and the next day he wants to throw him out of the window. I mean, yeah, that's Kubrick. I mean, that's or any filmmaker or anybody under stress.
Well, I have my hand up as a proxy for James Robert Sherman. I want to get his cheerful voice on here. James?
Yeah, hi Mark, and hi Tony
Hello.
and Liz and James. Always good to hear from you and Stephen. And just to say, guys, I loved your movie. I've seen it twice now, and I still know that I've missed stuff, so I'm going to see it again. I purchased it, so I'll be able to, take a look at it. But one of the things I wanted to mention, what a great achievement it was. I found Filmmaker to be the best Kubrick documentary I think that I
Worker.
saw on film until SK. I think that, yeah, the details were incredible. I'm just going to be a fanboy here for a couple minutes and just say I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I think was it you, Tony, who said, we're talking about it could have been a 5 or 6 hour film. I mean, as much detail and information that was involved in it. And again, the research and the archives and the stuff that Stephen did and the stuff that James did and everybody involved, right? Just a wonderful film. I just really, really enjoyed it. And I think it will gain stature as time goes on. So the reason I bought it, because I think that you and Liz should be able to retire early. And so hopefully if enough people buy it, but I mean, one of the things I vision is that maybe someday you can do this kind of treatment, God willing, and the creek don't rise, that you would be able to do this with other Stanley Kubrick films, that you would be able to apply this type of attention, this type of detail, this type of information. So I mean, I think it's the best Kubrick documentary on film. Obviously, there are great books, scholarly books and stuff like that, but these are people who have unlimited ink and paper and can do 600 pages or 1,000 pages. You're involved in the guardrails of filmmaking, and that you're not able to do the 6 hour documentary. Okay. I mean, you are, but it's very difficult to sell. It's very difficult to sell. So, but anyway, everybody did a fantastic job. I really loved it. I just awesome film. And are you guys putting it out there or trying to for Oscar consideration? Or trying to, I know that's a whole monster, project.
Yeah, I don't even know if the Oscars, when they see the Oscar statues in there, would be too happy.
Yeah.
but
Good
no,
point. Good point.
yeah, but they can always,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of great documentaries that aren't Oscar nominated. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead and finish.
No, you're not interrupting. That's I appreciate what you're saying, but yeah, we just wanted it out right away so we could start these conversations, do other podcasts and interviews are
Right.
coming up and stuff like that, because for the aim of catching up with the 25th anniversary of Eyes Wide Shut, hoping that we would have Eyes Wide Shut restored, released the way Kubrick left it. That's the ultimate goal. And also to get people to really appreciate and love a film that I don't think people have seen yet of Stanley Kubrick.
Absolutely. I do agree. And I agree 100% with you. I am on I'm there with you, Stanley, on wanting to get them to release his version, the version that the day he passed away. That's the one I want to see. And I agree with you. I mean, it's like, guys, it's a license to print money. You're gonna make money on this. Okay.
Exactly.
People, there's millions of Kubrick fans that are going to be interested in seeing his final cut, the one that the executive saw and Tom and Nicole saw, and on the and the
Exactly.
day before he passed away, right? So I think
Exactly.
that I mean, because it's like, I mean, look at the amounts of money. One time I did a research on the amounts of money that the final cut of Blade Runner did, as opposed to its initial release and stuff like that. And it was just astronomical in the sense that, there was just so much enthusiasm. And I consider that film now, the director's cut for Blade Runner, to be canon. That's the one, that the vision that we finally got from Ridley Scott, right? So I'm totally with you. And so, yeah, if there's a campaign that can be involved in that and send out the information to us and stuff like that. Okay, my final one and my final question was, one of the things I found fascinating in the film was, and it's just the vibe that I got, I could be totally, my brain seeing something that maybe not be there, but I got the impression that the estate was very, if nothing else, at best, hesitant to be involved with what you were doing. I mean, I maybe you get along with the estate fund, and I can understand.
Yes.
Yeah,
I do get along with the estate, and I would say I get along the most with Christiana.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I respect her. She's really zen, and she knows, she I don't know how to describe it, but she knows what's always good for Stanley and his films.
Yeah.
That to her, like, comes first.
Yeah.
Two, she probably would have been the only person that I wanted to have in the film, but of course I found the interviews with her were perfect, especially with the Charlie Rose one, because she did explain a lot. Because I was really more interested in, like, what Stanley was saying every night, because you only open up to these things to your wife and somebody who's also an artist. They would have conversations about that. You could see from what she was saying, she knew what Kubrick was up to.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, the estate being involved, I just didn't want them to control, because of what I knew.
Right.
There is no way I would have been able to do the movie, because I don't think they would have even been interested in something that, somebody's coming out to say that, like, the studio hated the movie, or that they thought it was a piece of shit and all that stuff that we heard. Right. I don't think they would have entertained just going even along with me. But I think at the end of the day, it's good for Stanley. It's good for Warner. Like we said, they could make all that money all over again.
Yeah.
We just care about Kubrick. Leave us alone. Go make your money. Just give us Stanley's cut.
Yeah.
And respect his vision. Do not limit his vision and say the man made a movie about marriage and he lost it. That's just bullshit.
Yeah. No, because the fact of the matter is, it's like, there is no way Stanley would have stood for the pixelated, men and women in front of the sex scenes. No. Okay, which the sex scenes were as banal as you could find. I mean, I found more exciting sex in Cinemax softcore porn than I did in Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah. Even I've seen the scene without the pixels. But there's also an idea for a documentary. I wish someone would interview, just as much as they could, Christiane, because I think Christiane had a huge influence on her husband's work. I think that she was his final sounding board and the person that he trusted probably more than anyone else on the planet, and probably took her advice.
Yeah,
so,
I thought about that, actually.
Yeah, I know, dude. If you could, I know. But anyway, last thoughts. Great achievement, everybody. Liz, James, Stephen, Tony. Fantastic achievement. I really enjoyed it. I was thoroughly enthralled, and I'm going to see it several times more.
Thank you. And there were many more people too that were really involved. Casper and other people.
Exactly.
The editor. I mean, just Kave. The music is great.
Fantastic.
If you liked it, it's just a lot of people did really a good job.
Yeah, and the visual, the graphics and the visuals.
Just beautiful.
Oh yeah! Oh, very well. And the editing, it was just so well edited. Everybody involved.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I mean, how your guys turned. The book that
What is that?
He owns it. He owns it. He owns the real.
The 1928 version of
From
Rhapsody, as it was called when the English version.
Hey, do you have the notebook?
No, I don't have the notebook. And all I did was I scanned every edge of this and scanned some pages inside. And Tony's SKAS in the Netherlands completely made it look real. It's never left my house, but it was as though they had it in their in the Netherlands. Yeah,
a lot of work. Yeah,
I mean, this is a really interesting tale. How we got hold of this
from
Tony
the
said,
library. Yeah,
Tony said, "Well, just go to your libraries." So I went to 4 or 5 libraries around here. Nobody could get it, but then I went to one library and they went on the database and they said there is one copy in the country. It's up in the northeast.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, could you get it shipped down?" He said, "Yeah." So they shipped it down a week later, and strangely, it originated from Briarfield, which is the first library round the corner from me. Briarfield. It's only been out 10 times since 1961. It's only been booked out. I presume there was another card before 61 because this came out in 28. But from 1961, it was taken out of the library 4 or 5 times in 1961, and then it wasn't taken out again until 97 once, twice in 97, and once in March 99.
Wow.
But then I was the next person in Jan 2001.
And then you bought it.
And then I bought it for £12.
They give £12. He got it.
£12.60. I bought it off them, and I think it's worth thousands.
Yeah, you know that. Yeah, you encounter these amazing things. Like I mean, the footage of Schnitzler in there. That documentary just doesn't exist anywhere. And I got this footage from Peter Schnitzler, and it was done for television. And he passed away, of course, sadly, and he didn't see the film. And there's just so much. We actually have plans that all the stuff that we used for Film Worker and for SK. We will also be giving away a bunch of that stuff at one point. Yeah. To the fans.
Yeah. So. A Taschen book, maybe, Tony. Taschen book?
With Taschen book. We have the archive book with stickies, looks like it's been run through a car wash. You can have that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Because look what I did is originally the reason for collecting was we were planning with Film Worker and SK to actually have auction all that stuff so we can get money to make the movie. So it was all about Leon donated stuff, and I was buying anything on eBay. Anything that had to do with Eyes Watch Out because I was working on it. I thought, I could always, raise money with it. And I just kept buying and buying and buying, and we ended up with suitcases and boxes. And we didn't do it. Because when you think about it, it's like another whole job.
Right. Yeah.
Every time Tom and Nicole signed a poster of Eyes Watch Out, I grabbed. Every time there was a reel here or there, I grabbed. And it was just then of course you can't control yourself. So I started to buy even stuff that had to do with his other movies. Then I met Steven and and then we met other people who gave us so much material. Who gave us the most material, Stephen?
Probably, footage-wise, probably James Marinaccio.
Yeah.
Is he still here? I think Martin Pope had.
Martin Pope gave us a lot of good stuff.
And photographs and some newspapers, I think, didn't they?
And the map.
No, I got the map.
You got the map. Okay, so that's yours. So we just accumulated a lot of stuff, and there's tons of stuff at one point. So we can always do something with it that is exciting eventually, and raise some money with it. Give away stuff also that we used from the movie because we have all the original scans of things in the film
and all the footage of making it all. That's a lot. All those.
Oh, the interviews. Yeah, that's eventually we will release that. So
What did everyone think about the final scene when we start on the overhead blueprint of the New York street and then it all becomes 3D? I couldn't believe that.
Was Stanley's
Yeah.
photo smiling? Oh, it's just
I know, yeah. It
he's
was
so
well
sly. Yeah, he's so sly. And actually, Christiana took that picture.
Mm.
Aw.
Yeah, that's her photo. It was like a personal photo.
Yeah, I was telling Scott at the beginning, that's one thing I put together was the blueprint at the beginning, then the 3D model, and then that picture. That's one of the things that made me cry.
Mm.
Until I got it.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, I can't wait for us to screen the movie in the theater, because I always get this feeling at the end that people will just rise for Stanley. Because when he comes up and it says his birthday and the date he passed with that picture and that sly little smile, which again, he also, that wasn't just a headshot, huh? That also connects to the film until his whole career, huh? With the Kubrick stare. And it's exactly framed exactly like Nicole when she looks at Tom. And so that was why he released it with the set, of his headshot. And I think this was him saying, I pulled a good one on you, Yeah, and I always, when I see it at the end and him smiling, I go, right on, good for you, Stanley. You really every time I get a good message, I go, you deserve it, because I really felt we were so sad about, and it's nice to see now that people get it, and it'd be so beautiful to see it in the theater and see everybody's reaction at the end with that big smile on his face looking at the model. Yeah, it will happen.
Awesome.
Yeah, we probably will do screenings in New York, definitely LA, places like that. So we'll work on that next. But at least we wanted to release it now,
Right.
to get people to talk and just get some eyes on it and not keep hiding, because it's too long. Yeah. Thank you.
So we've been going for an hour and a half.
That's good enough.
There's still lots of questions we would have to ask you. Maybe we can do this again at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Please.
A lot of
Sure.
great stuff.
Honored. It's our pleasure. And thank you for being supportive and all that. I mean, because we need all the help always. So
Yeah, I'll say real quickly that I love film documentaries in general. I've seen so many, and my all-time favorite two film documentaries, yours kind of reminds me of them, and they are both about like a sort of maniacal, obsessed director making a single film. One was Hearts of Darkness, about Apocalypse Now, and Burden of Dreams about Herzog's Fitzcarraldo. And when I saw this, I said, "What? This kind of reminds me of those two. There's something in common."
Yeah.
the obsession.
Yeah.
The
That's
obsession.
Tony.
Tony, I think your film is up there with those two. That's thanks for mentioning that, James, because I agree. It's one of the best film documentaries I've ever seen. So
thank you, and I love to just at least to be done and to see Liz smiling and to see Steven smiling and to see the avatar of James smiling. I think, and because they really deserve that, and I know I took too long, and it was I was wondering if it's going to ever come out, and now it's out. We're talking about it, and there's no greater joy. It's true.
Yeah, great.
So thank you guys. Yeah, it's all respect for Stanley. So it's Stanley Kubrick. So it's all good.
If I may add, thank you for this film. Thank you for SK13. Plus, I appreciate the fact that Liz has composed a Kubrick one-point perspective for this Zoom.
Yes. Perfect.